Imagine for a moment a world painted in shades of gray, utterly devoid of anything that stirs your soul. No breathtaking sunsets, no captivating art, no face that makes your heart skip a beat.
Pretty bleak.
A truly bland existence, wouldn't you say? Today on The Deep Dive, we're tackling a question that kind of hums beneath the surface of our everyday lives. Why do we need beauty?
Yeah.
We'll be sifting through ideas from, philosophy to psychology, history to art, all sparked by a collection of really thought-provoking materials you shared with us.
It's a question that feels almost, self-evident on one level, right? But when you really dig into it, as our sources encourage us to do, the reasons become surprisingly layered. We're not just talking about something nice to look at. We're exploring whether beauty plays a far more fundamental role in our lives than we might initially think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Forget the glossy magazine covers for a second. We're trying to uncover if this yearning for beauty is like a core part of what makes us human. Let's start by diving into that immediate, almost involuntary reaction we have when we encounter something beautiful.
Okay. Well, one of the most vivid examples in our sources describes the experience of seeing pre-Raphaelite paintings.
Yes.
The person writing was moved to tears by the translucent light, color, and sensuality. That's a powerful, unfiltered response.
It really is.
It bypasses logic and goes straight to our emotions.
It really highlights that instinctive pull, doesn't it? It's like we're wired to seek out and appreciate certain qualities.
Definitely.
Another source pointed out how we often gravitate towards things that show quality, even if we don't know the price tag. It suggests we have this, innate recognition of good craftsmanship, something that resonates beyond just mere appearance.
And what's interesting there is how this appreciation extends beyond just visual appeal. Our sources argue that beauty encompasses things like quality and craftsmanship, even a sense of care or soul, perhaps, imbued in an object.
Soul, I like that.
Yeah, think about the difference between some mass-produced thing meant to be disposable.
Right. Cheap plastic.
And an old, well-made tool that has lasted generations. We tend to value the latter, right? Even if it's not conventionally pretty.
Totally. It makes you wonder if that inherent appreciation connects to something deeper. One of our sources even posits that beauty isn't a luxury at all, but a fundamental element for human thriving.
That is a bold claim.
It is. What kind of thriving are we talking about here exactly?
Well, the sources connect the presence or absence of beauty to the overall well-being of communities.
Okay.
There's often a stark contrast visually between neglected, often quite ugly neighborhoods and more affluent, aesthetically considered ones.
I see that, yeah.
But it's not just about appearances. The example of community gardens transforming unsafe neighborhoods is powerful.
Right.
It shows how introducing beauty can actually foster connection, reduce crime, and improve the quality of life in, tangible ways. The beauty acts as a catalyst almost.
A catalyst for positive social change. Wow. Okay, here's where it gets really thought-provoking. This idea that beauty might connect us to something beyond our immediate material world. One source uses terms like spirit, and others might even consider it a connection to, something larger than ourselves, maybe even God for some.
That spiritual or emotional dimension of beauty keeps cropping up in the sources. It's presented as a source of hope, a spark that ignites happiness, and even fuels our ability to dream, especially when things are tough.
Yeah.
The idea that beauty connects us to the best in ourselves is quite powerful.
It is.
Suggesting it acts as an internal guide, sort of nudging us towards positive human qualities.
It's almost like beauty offers a glimpse beyond the everyday grind. Now, shifting focus slightly, our sources also offer a fascinating historical perspective that really contrasts with how we often think today.
Absolutely. We tend to separate beauty and utility, right?
Yeah.
Function and form.
Totally separate boxes.
But historically, maybe just a couple of centuries ago, those two were much more intertwined. Harmony, balance, skilled craftsmanship, these were all seen as equally vital. The old apprenticeship systems where artisans learn their trade over years, that reflects this deep cultural value placed on creating things that were not only useful, but also inspiring and enduring, lasting.
So beauty wasn't just an afterthought sprinkled on top. It was baked into the very process of creation.
Exactly.
And that leads to another compelling idea: using beauty as a kind of moral compass.
This is a fascinating proposition, to use the potential for beauty as a litmus test for ideas or products.
A litmus test? How so?
Well, the questions our source suggests are really insightful. Will this uplift someone? Will it bring a sense of ease or joy? Will it tap into our better nature? If the answer is no, maybe we need to reconsider. This reframes beauty as a fundamental indicator of whether something aligns with our humanity.
And in our increasingly digital lives, one source raises an interesting point about human-computer interaction. We're constantly optimizing for efficiency, speed.
Yeah.
But have we perhaps lost sight of beauty in the process? And what might that mean for our connection to technology and maybe even to each other?
It's a really pertinent question, isn't it? And, on a more personal level, the sources also highlight the importance of small, deliberate acts of beauty and self-care.
Oh, I like this part.
Yeah, the anecdote about the French tradition of making breakfast a special ritual, it's a lovely illustration of valuing oneself through a simple, beautiful practice.
It really emphasizes how these small gestures can infuse our daily lives with a sense of worth.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of consciously creating little pockets of beauty, even just taking a moment to appreciate how you look or feel, is presented as an act of self-love with wider benefits.
That link between self-care or self-valuing and an appreciation for beauty is key. The source suggests it can boost confidence, enhance overall well-being, and even increase our capacity for empathy and generosity towards others. It sounds like a stretch, but think about the example of Diana Vreeland insisting on models having perfectly polished toenails.
Even if no one saw them.
Exactly, because it apparently influenced their inner state, their whole demeanor, how they carried themselves. Those small acts of attention matter.
It's all connected, isn't it? Now, there's a common misconception that some people just aren't creative or, don't get beauty or don't need it, but our sources really challenge that.
Yeah, the argument is that a sense of design, balance, harmony, it's deeply ingrained in our human makeup. It's in our DNA, so to speak.
Okay.
We might not all be artists or designers by profession, obviously, but we all respond to and appreciate beauty in some form. The key is maybe just becoming more aware of the beautiful things that already surround us.
Like what?
Well, whether it's patterns in nature, a well-designed object, a piece of music, a kind interaction, a meaningful experience, it's everywhere if you look.
It's about recognizing that inherent appreciation we all have. And to really underscore the significance of beauty, our sources share some powerful insights from thinkers across different eras.
Yes, we have Plato suggesting that contemplating beauty allows the soul to grow wings.
Wow.
Highlighting its transformative and elevating power. Then there's Ralph Waldo Emerson's reaction to Raphael's The Transfiguration, where he describes the calm, benignant beauty that goes directly to the heart.
Directly to the heart. Powerful.
And even Lizzo, in her song My Skin, offers a modern perspective, emphasizing that beauty is even bigger than what we think it means.
These are such diverse voices, from ancient philosophy to modern pop, yet they all seem to point to this profound impact of beauty.
They really do.
And the description of that shared human experience of being utterly captivated by natural beauty, like a sunset, that really captures that universal connection we have to something larger than ourselves.
It's that feeling of being momentarily lifted out of our everyday concerns, isn't it, into a space that feels far richer and more eloquent.
Yeah.
The term plenitude is introduced in one source, describing that rare sense of complete satisfaction of wanting for nothing when we're under the spell of beauty.
Plenitude.
It's even compared to the feeling of love.
Like falling in love.
Yeah, that most fundamental human experience. And the idea that falling in love with beauty, whether it's in nature, art, or even in other people, holds the promise of realigning us with our better selves.
That's incredibly hopeful. It suggests that beauty acts as a kind of lodestar, guiding us towards who we aspire to be.
Now, it's important to consider a different angle here, too. That true beauty extends beyond mere material possessions and the fleeting trends dictated by consumerism.
Right, it's not just about buying stuff.
Exactly. One source argues that it's more about how we choose to spend our time focusing on meaningful pursuits, strong community bonds, and acting responsibly towards each other and the planet.
So it's not just about what we acquire, but about how we live and the impact we have, particularly maybe in our role as stewards of the earth. That's a really important distinction.
Absolutely. And science, in its own way, continually reveals breathtaking beauty all around us.
How so in science?
Well, from the intricate geometry of a nautilus shell, or the vibrant colors of eucalyptus flowers,
Oh, yeah?
to the awe-inspiring images of distant galaxies, science unveils the inherent beauty woven into the fabric of the universe on every scale.
And it's not just the visual spectacle, right?
Yeah.
It's also the elegant simplicity of scientific principles, like the underlying code of DNA.
Right. that code giving rise to this astonishing diversity of life.
That's crap.
Even the process of scientific discovery itself, that pursuit of truth and the unveiling of order from chaos, can be seen as a profoundly beautiful endeavor.
That search for understanding, yeah.
Now, our individual perceptions of beauty, what you find beautiful, act as powerful motivators. They're like guiding lights that shape our desires and fuel our passions.
So beauty is multifaceted, emotional, creative, spiritual even. It takes on an endless variety of forms.
Precisely. And it's encouraging to see the growing movement towards more inclusive and diverse definitions of beauty, celebrating individuality, choice, freedom of expression.
That feels like a positive shift.
Definitely. Beauty, it seems, has this incredible power to inspire us to constantly strive for something better, for continuous improvement.
However, we also need to critically examine the ways in which beauty standards can be, well, narrow and commercialized.
Yes, that's the flip side. Our sources point out how, unfortunately, beauty can be used, and has been used, to create social hierarchies and divisions, segregation even.
And the commercialization of beauty, with its constantly shifting and often unattainable ideals promoted by the diet and cosmetic industries.
Ugh, yes.
It does seem to keep us in a perpetual state of chasing an ever-moving target, often at significant personal and financial cost.
Totally. The examples given of changing beauty ideals, from favoring certain ethnic features one decade to the next, to the current trends in lip fillers, eye lifts, endless skin treatments.
It never stops.
It really highlights the arbitrary and, frankly, transient nature of these commercially driven standards. Yet, despite that, there's this persistent global fascination with the concept of beauty itself.
Which brings us neatly to the deeper philosophical perspectives on why beauty truly matters. This offers a really profound exploration of why this seemingly superficial topic holds such significance.
Indeed. Despite the common sentiment in, say, politics or business that beauty is secondary to more pragmatic concerns.
Nice to have, but not essential.
Right. But the Western philosophical tradition has long recognized its importance. Our sources introduce a pragmatist cum phenomenological lens, which sounds complicated, but simply put.
Okay, break it down.
It focuses on what beauty does in our lives and how it shows up in our experience, rather than just trying to nail down a definitive definition of what it is.
Gotcha, what it does.
And it connects beauty to these core ideas of goodness and truth, often referred to as the transcendentalia.
Transcendentalia. What did that term really imply here?
Essentially, it suggests that beauty, goodness, and truth share a fundamental underlying nature. They're not entirely separate concepts. They're deeply interconnected. And they're intrinsically valuable, meaning their worth isn't just about what practical benefit they provide. They're good in themselves.
The ancient Greek concept of kallikagathia comes to mind, the idea of the good and the beautiful being intertwined in a well-lived life.
Exactly. That perfectly illustrates this connection. And it's still interesting how we often use aesthetic language, like calling something ugly behavior, to express moral disapproval.
That's true. I never thought of it that way.
And there's an analogy drawn between pursuing truth and pursuing beauty. Both often require letting go of our ego, our self-centeredness, and submitting to the demands of the subject matter itself.
How so?
Whether you're a scientist seeking truth or an artist striving for beauty, you often have to put aside your own preconceptions and biases to really see or create clearly. Both truth and beauty have this revealing quality. They can lead to profound, transformative experiences.
And historically, encounters with beauty have often been linked to the sacred, right, within religious traditions.
Absolutely. That link is very strong historically. Beauty is also presented philosophically as a way of reconciling opposing forces, conflicting elements. It symbolizes a kind of fundamental unity and draws us towards greater harmony. And even in modern philosophical discussions, you often find these spiritual undertones when people talk about beauty, especially in relation to creativity, renewal, things that feel soul-saving, even without an explicit theological framework.
Okay. Then there's the shift that occurred around the 18th century where the focus moved more towards the individual's experience of beauty.
Yes, exactly. Its role in our personal consciousness and how we relate to one another became central. Beauty started to be seen as something that fosters these immediate and complete moments of connection.
Connection between people.
Yes, fostering feelings of shared experience, even selfless cooperation. It was even thought to have the power to break down barriers and open up possibilities for freedom. Think about the powerful, unifying emotions evoked by music, for instance.
Ah, like the reference to Schiller's idea of aesthetic experiences fostering a sense of universal brotherhood, maybe transcending ideological divides,
Precisely.
particularly through something like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. That's incredibly moving.
It is. And the notion that agreement based on aesthetic appreciation, this voluntary free play of imagination, as Kant called it, can actually create stronger social bonds than forced intellectual or moral agreement. That's a powerful insight.
Stronger than being forced to agree.
Potentially, yes, because it comes freely from shared feeling, not coercion. Schiller even envisioned using the arts for the aesthetic education of mankind, to cultivate an unselfish regard for the world.
Wow, suggesting beauty has a vital role in shaping us as ethical beings.
A really vital role. But the key takeaway here, emphasized in the sources, is that to truly experience the full benefits of beauty, we need to appreciate it for its own sake.
Not just for what it can do for us.
Exactly. Much like love. Right. If we only see it as a means to an end, if we're instrumentalizing it, we miss its deeper value.
And that kind of instrumental thinking, always asking what's in it for me, can actually undermine the very outcomes we're hoping for.
That's the argument. It highlights why things like empathy, trust, and genuine unconditional commitment are so crucial for a thriving society. They can't be purely instrumental.
So contemporary philosophy often focuses on the relationships that beauty fosters.
Yes. The connection between the observer and the beautiful thing, sure, but also the connections between people who share an appreciation for something beautiful.
Okay.
Whether we're talking about classical ideas of beauty as welcoming and enlivening, or more modern interpretations that emphasize awe or saving grace, they all seem to relate back to our social interactions.
And the arguments for why beauty is far from a frivolous concern are really quite compelling when laid out.
They really are. Let's run through some of them. Beauty sparks innovation.
Giving form to new ideas.
Right. It inspires us to share, imitate, create further. It encourages us to think beyond ourselves, fostering a non-competitive spirit. Beauty expands when shared. It's not zero-sum.
That's a great point.
It supports relationships that aren't based just on utility. It broadens our perspective, helps us see beauty in unexpected places, enriching our world. It motivates us to care for and preserve what we find beautiful, often more effectively than just self-interest or duty.
Sure.
It disrupts our routine thinking, jolts us into attentiveness, mindfulness, encourages deeper reflection, fostering a more cosmopolitan viewpoint, you could say.
Okay.
It leads to growth and self-correction as our tastes evolve. It enlivens the world around us, highlighting the unique value and vulnerability of individuals, fostering respect.
Respect, yeah.
And ultimately, it fosters cooperation as we come together to create and appreciate beauty for a purpose larger than ourselves.
Those are such powerful functions.
Right.
It really reframes beauty entirely.
Yeah, our sources neatly summarize the socially relevant roles of beauty as being about heuristic expression, hermeneutic interpretation, innovation, transformation, and also restoration and reconciliation, healing even.
And it's important not to forget that historical link between philosophical discussions of beauty and theological ideas about the sacred.
Definitely. While modern thought often critiques that connection or is wary of it, the sources suggest that completely removing that sense of awe and wonder from our experience of beauty might be a mistake. We might lose something essential.
It suggests that a whole philosophy, maybe one that acknowledges a sense of something beyond the purely material, might be essential for fully grasping the aesthetic experience.
Precisely. It leaves room for that transcendence.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today, let's come back to that central question. Why do we need beauty?
Well, our exploration reveals, I think, that beauty is so much more than just a superficial pleasure. It seems deeply woven into our survival, our emotional and spiritual well-being, our social connections, our moral compass, and our fundamental capacity for growth and understanding. It's not just icing on the cake.
It's part of the cake itself.
Maybe even the plate it sits on.
So think about that for a moment. What could happen if you consciously sought out and cultivated more beauty in your daily life? Not just passively noticed it, but actively cultivated it. What kind of impact might that have on you personally and maybe even on the world around you? What small step towards beauty will you take today? It's definitely something worth pondering.
Absolutely.
Thank you for diving deep with us.